Good evening and welcome to the City of Pasco Council Workshop Meeting. The council thanks you for being part of our city government. At workshop meetings, the council discusses issues, but no formal action is taken. Following Governor Inslee's recent statewide mask mandate, facial masks are required to be worn at all times while in the council chambers. If any individual is unable to comply with this order, then the meeting will be recessed until compliance is met. If compliance is not met and the individual refuses to leave the chambers, then the meeting either will recess or reconvene only virtually or be adjourned. The agenda packets are available on the City of Pasco website at www.pasco-wa.gov/agenda. Please note that the City Council workshops may be accessed through GoToWebinar. This workshop is also being televised live on Pasco TV channel 191, on Spectrum Cable on Pasco and Richland, and is streamed on the city's Facebook page, website, and YouTube channel. This and previous council workshop video is available on the city's website. And lastly, the public may submit their comments and or questions by contacting the city manager, city clerk, or by using the Pasco Ask Pasco application. So with housekeeping issues out of the way, could we have a roll call, please?
Council members: Alvarado,
Present.
Maloney,
Present.
Milne,
Present.
Roach, and she is absent tonight.
Roach was,
Okay.
is excused tonight, yes,
Great,
thank you.
Serrano,
Yep.
Mayor Pro Tem Barajas,
Present.
and Mayor Martinez.
Present, thank you. Tonight, I am just tickled pink because it's about as beautiful of an audience that I have seen in 2 years. And I see a little bit of green back there, and we tonight have a beautiful group of young ladies and women and men that are representing the Girl Scouts from Eastern Washington and Northern Idaho. And tonight for our Pledge of Allegiance, if you could have them come up, I'd like to invite them to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if we could just have them come up and you can line up right here. And if we'd all rise for the flag salute, please. So you guys need to be very loud, and so we can all hear you, and well, you already got pretty out of the way. So whenever you're ready, you want to go ahead and help them get started when you're ready? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So tonight, if you want to go ahead and maybe introduce some of the members and go ahead and.
Thank you. Do we have Brian Newberry on the line? No?
Well, so yes.
He's not connected to audio? Is it on his end or? Okay. So I'll just say a few words. Thank you very much for letting us be here today. Today is a very exciting day. Today is the Day of the Girl. It is a pleasure to be here. We have a wonderful group of girls, young girls, and we wanted to be here today. As I said, it's a Day of the Girls, to show them how important it is to be here and to be present. I was here about a month ago or so, and I wanted to let you know that it's an honor to be here, and also letting everyone know that we will be starting a new group of girls with our pathfinding group in the schools, in the Pasco School District. So there will be more of us. You'll see more of us throughout the year. So thank you for letting us be here.
Well, thank you for coming tonight. And I would just like to say to the young ladies, and I'm going to go ahead and stand up so I can see you guys. I've had this on my kitchen table for a year or more, just waiting for somebody to come and sell me some cookies. Okay, I usually go to Walmart and there's somebody there, but I haven't seen them in a long time. And I'm just looking forward. I really like, what are these called? Samoan? Samoas. These are my favorite. And I would buy 2 boxes anytime I would see anybody. So anyway, I just want to also tell you, thank you for coming tonight and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And I want each and every one of you to know that your dreams are as high as you want them to be. And you guys could be sitting right here in about 20 years or less, or give or take some. You can achieve anything you want to achieve, and we need leaders like you guys to lead our communities, to lead in any capacity in what you want to do with the rest of your life. So I just want to encourage you to work hard and make people like me happy, sell more cookies, and looking forward to seeing the successes that and you guys achieving your dreams. So thank you so much, and parents, thank you for all the support you provide for your young daughters. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. We'll give them a chance to go ahead and do good in school, girls. Okay. Next, we'll move on to verbal reports from council members. Council, anybody have anything they'd like to report from anything they've done in the last week?
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Barajas.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Barajas, go ahead.
I would like to just do a quick share of the Palomino Park. I know you were there, and I got there just with enough time to help shovel some dirt into the new trees being planted out there at Palomino Park. Awesome park. Met Mrs. Salinas, who was the champion to get a park in that area. So thank you very much for being part of the process. And secondly, as you were as well, Mayor, also went over to the bus parade in honor of our Pasco School District bus driver, Richard Lenhart. And so just wanted to share a little bit the support, the immense support. Communities came together from Wenatchee, from Snohomish, Sunnyside, Prosser, Othello. There was bus drivers from around the state that came to show support for the family and the bus drivers. That was very emotional. And so just want to say thank you to everyone that participated. And that's all I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Barajas. And I guess I would like to piggyback to that. As Mayor Pro Tem has already recognized, I also want to recognize and thank Director Zach Ratkai, Dan Doda, and the gentleman, your arborist, I forgot his name.
That was Larry Villegas.
Yes. These gentlemen did a phenomenal job over at Palomino Park. They planted about 23 beautiful trees. The community outreach and the community participation that we had at Palomino Park was unbelievable. Everybody came out with their children, planted trees. It was Arbor Day. Just had a wonderful time, and just as amazing. I didn't realize how big that park was from the street where I normally drive by. You don't really notice how big it is until you walk up on top and see the whole field. And then the swing sets and on the eastern side of the park. It was just a great event. Really appreciate staff and the community that came out and became a part of that park. And it was just a very, very satisfying activity to attend. So we're very happy with that. Thank you so much. The other thing, again, is the bus parade. How impressive was that? One of the one of the Pasco school buses went to Earnhardt's home and picked up the family, dropped them off at the school where there was a crowd of people, and the buses from all over the state of Washington came to support. And what was just really, really admirable is these buses had the colors of Pasco high schools and the posters on their buses saying, "We believe in Pasco," and the support that the family felt and the example of the wife of Mr. Earnhardt, just the whole thing was so emotional and just so beautiful to see. I bet you there was over 100 or 200 buses that came by, and just to see the expression on the people's face that were on the bus, just they were so pleased and feel so supported, and to feel that support from the state of Washington, all over the state and all the school districts and the bus systems, departments of these school districts, it was just amazing, and I just can't say enough about it. I want to thank the Pasco School District staff, Raul Cital, Superintendent Whitney, and those who were there attending. They couldn't say enough good things about our police department, Pasco Police Department. You guys are amazing. You're making a difference in our community, and that support, that scene and of that activity really showed our true colors and true colors of most of the people throughout the state, and it was just a beautiful thing to watch. And I just, again, couldn't say enough about it. I could be here for an hour just telling you how how wonderful it was, and I know the family was comforted. And again, thank you everyone who participated and had a part in that for that event. The other thing that I was able to attend this week was the open house we had for Lewis Street. We had a pretty decent attendance here. The contractor and staff were able to answer questions, receive comments from the community, and I think it was well attended, and a lot of good came out of that meeting. And so thank you, staff who participated in that area as well. So those were the events that I was able to attend. Is there any other council member that has anything to report? If not, thank you so much. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is items for discussion. And tonight, our very first item is a Visit Tri-Cities 2021 mid-year report and tourism promotion area update and the 2022 budget and marketing plan. And today, we have our very own Mr. Tri-Cities to come and give us a report.
You know, when this whole program started this evening and you said you were tickled and delighted, and I thought, because we're having a Visit Tri-Cities presentation.
Oh,
here we
okay.
go.
Well, that too. That is
Yeah,
well.
exactly. Well, Mayor Martinez, City Council, and City staff, thanks for giving me a few moments tonight to present to you our 2022 budget and marketing plan for the Tri-City Regional Hotel Motel Commission. We refer to often as the TPA Commission. So we'll talk about the tourism promotion area programs. Just a reminder, TPA is an assessment, not a tax, and it's our visitors pay $3 per night when they visit our community, and we use those dollars to market the community and the investments you're making today through marketing our region, pay dividends tomorrow. So you'll see that a lot of the work that my team does, we actually net the benefit of that 1 to 5 years into the future. So you hear about our budget, and then also we'll do a real quick overview of our mid-year report, which we present to the cities in written form every year in August. So there's a lot of things that we promote, as you might imagine, as it relates to the Tri-Cities through this assessment, and it provides great value. So even during the height of COVID here, not that we're out of it, but in 2020, when we were really first starting to feel the effects of it, tourism was down nationwide, 42%. Here in the Tri-Cities, 30%. We did far better than many of our competing destinations, but we were still able to, with our partners, drive an economic impact of $350 million and net about $40 million in state and local taxes, which of course goes to help to fund things like emergency services, police and fire, schools, teachers, parks, the maintenance of our roads, and so much more. All of those things that provide quality of life for all of us to enjoy. And that's what these dollars are spent on, is driving that quality of life impact. So it looks like we've got some fonts. They're having some issues here, but if you can find your way through it, our Tri-Cities Hotel Motel Commission, there are 6 commissioners, 2 per each city. We have your Pasco representatives here tonight. They're also my board members. We have BJ Patel and Monica Hammerberg. Always appreciate their support. They're always so good to show up when we're given these presentations. So here is a quick look at what's going on. I'll give you a high-level overview. There's a lot on the screen. What we're seeing is tourism is starting to rebound. So there's recovery happening, although it's happening a bit slowly. And full expectation is that we're going to see return to 2019 numbers, about 2024, with some of our group business. Some analysts are even saying 2025. We'll talk about what that looks like. But we're driving the return right now through leisure. So our occupancy has been up We're starting to see our hoteliers, their ability to charge a rate that they were seeing back in 19. We're starting to see that creep up as well. So the return is happening. As it relates to some of our group business, so there's meetings and conventions, and then there's sports. Meetings and conventions is where we're expecting to see a slow return, and that's for many reasons. One, groups, their interest and ability to gather. Of course, earlier in the year, we were still in that phased approach. As we rolled out of that, some of the other things that we're working towards as we work to get people here is really combating some of the people's budgets that were adversely impacted, but also their ability to return that return on investment. If they invest in an event, can they bring the visitors in? So one of the big things that we're promoting is safety, that it is safe to gather, and how our partners are going about mitigating COVID when people do come together in these groups. So we're working to beat the analyst predictions and work outside the box, and we're doing that through creative endeavors. One of the things that we're doing is working on a deeper level of personalization with those meeting planners that bring business to our community, using leveraging our video tactics, so presenting messaging in a new way to cut through the clutter. Our teams also travel on sales missions. So we go to Olympia, for instance. We meet with Washington State associations to bring business back. We're doing that here this fall. We have a virtual FAM we're doing. And then my team travels across the U.S. and works with meeting planners where they attend meetings, conventions, and conferences. And they'll meet with 1 to 30 meeting planners per event and convince them that Tri-Cities is the place for them to host business. Now, when we look at sports, we've got greater opportunity here. We saw the moment that our phasing earlier this year allowed our teams to take the field, they were on the field and playing. And we've had some dynamite tournaments. Even just this last weekend, we've had late season play. We had 80 softball teams in town playing. This is new business. So a lot of these event holders this is their jobs. These are how they make a living, and they're developing new products, which is great for us. We're able to host new events. So we're pretty bullish on what's going to happen this next year as we drive the return of tourism through sports. Our sports developments team also travel across the U.S. Matter of fact, last week I had team on travel. This week I have team on travel, and in 2 weeks they're traveling to another event where they'll meet with up to 30 decision makers to convince them that the Tri-Cities is the place for them to bring their tournaments. A lot of what we do with tourism development is what you might more traditionally think of with our marketing endeavors. So of course we invest in broadcast TV and radio, but we do a ton with digital. So this is digital display, video pre-roll. We do a lot in the social media space. A lot of digital products in here. We just launched a new Visit Tri-Cities website. Encourage you to check that out at visittricities.com. And embedded in that and supported by these dollars are a number of different platforms. One of them is called CrowdRiff, and this is a display of what's called user-generated content. So it gives us license, or individuals license their use of photos that they take and post on Instagram, for instance. So they'll go out and about town, they'll have an authentic Tri-Cities experience, they'll share it with the masses, we can capitalize on it, and it's a third-party endorsement. So if I had been on my game, I've been out taco crawling, I'm 19 tacos into a 20 taco crawl, and I bought some extra tacos, so I've been infusing dollars into the city of Pasco and having a good time doing it. But that's the kind of content that you see show up on CrowdRiff. On our new website, we also have an itinerary builder. Our SkyNav platform, which is supported by these dollars, is a 360-degree virtual tour of the Tri-Cities. So bird's eye views, 360. You can come down to street level and you can actually tour different properties around town, things that might attract visitors. We also have a new calendar of events, pretty robust feature on there as well. Other digital products, we have a virtual city pass going on. We just launched an Ales and Tails pass, so you can bring your four-legged furry friend along for a craft beverage and a burger or whatever it is that you might choose to eat. We have a wine pass. This summer we had a summer savings pass, and we're working on an indoor adventure pass to drive visitation this winter. We also have our Kula Tours. So we typically bring these decision makers into town for site visits, and they can check out our lodging accommodations, meeting spaces, and sports infrastructure. Many of them haven't been traveling, so we're taking the tour to them via these virtual platforms. So one more way we're being innovative to drive that future visitation. The other thing that we do that has significant impact with these dollars in our endeavors is bringing travel writers into town. So City of Pasco is a supporter of TBEX. We're very excited about that next year when we bring hundreds of travel writers to town. Here in, I think it's 2 weeks, we have USA Today coming into town. So these publications, many of the folks that we work with are not only domestic publications, but they have an international audience as well. This is a funding comparative. This is what we call our competitive set, those communities that we're competing against for meetings and sports business, but also leisure travel. When you look at this, two chief competitors for us, I should mention, upper left, overall budget, we all have different funding streams. Some are membership organizations, some aren't. Some utilize hotel, motel, lodging tax, others don't. And then many of us, if not all, are investing in TPA dollars in our marketing endeavors. So the upper left is the overall budget between these destinations. Upper right is the TPA budgets. Our chief competitors are really Spokane and Yakima. We're constantly working with them and working against them to bring business to our community. So both of those communities have been making significant investments in groups, their group business infrastructure. So Spokane has made recent investments in their meetings and convention space, but just this year they launched the Podium, which is sports infrastructure, a major complex. Yakima just expanded their convention center. They're now the fourth largest convention center in Washington State, and they have wonderful sports infrastructure, the Sozo Sports Complex. And they're, of course, a little more than an hour closer to the Puget Sound, which is where we attract a lot of our business. So they're positioned really well competitively. We increased our TPA assessment by $1 this year in partnership with area hoteliers and the Tri-Cities Hotel Motel Commission. Yakima, about 6 months after we had done our increased their TPA assessment by $2. So if you see on the right, their budget is significantly smaller than ours in terms of TPA, but this next year we're expecting that to increase exponentially. So for us, we will be more creative and innovative in our endeavors to be competitive in that space. And I think here in the Tri-Cities, just overall, we've got a very, very competitive product. It's a beautiful community. We love those waterways. That's what we've got going on for TPA. I should have mentioned, if you look over on the right, Visit Tri-Cities, our overall budget for this next year is just short of $1.9 million for TPA funds that we're looking to reinvest.
Michael, I have a quick question.
Oh, shoot.
Do you find that, you talk about competitive with Yakima and Spokane, do you find that because we're kind of in the middle, is that more of a challenge, or do we get a lot of business like from down south? How do you see that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So a lot of, particularly with our association business coming out of Seattle, we will occasionally hear the drive all the way over to the Tri-Cities, but I don't know that the Spokane's fares too much better in that regard. And I don't know if either one of our hoteliers here have any opinions on that, just where we're sitting geographically with Yakima and Spokane.
Is it okay if I talk from here?
Well, we'd like to get you on so we can hear through the mic. Appreciate your comments, Mr. Patel.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing us to have this presentation. So your question was if we are getting people competition with Yakima, and what was the market?
Yeah, I just know that we're kind of in the middle,
Right.
and I'm wondering if, does that mean we have to work harder to get folks to come to the Tri-Cities, or do we
Yes,
get more business from down south?
So we do have to work harder to get people from the west coming east. It's a competitive market. Apart from Spokane, who recently added quite a bit of meeting space along with sporting complex. Yakima, as Michael mentioned, expanding their convention center. And the new news, I don't know Michael even knows that, Wenatchee just put an RFP out to expand their convention center. So Wenatchee is a good competitive market for Tri-Cities. And a lot of business goes back and forth between Yakima, Wenatchee, Tri-Cities, and Spokane. But it's hard. The team has to work hard to get them. We try and give them good incentives through the TPA dollars, and the convention center management, Corey Pearson, also helps with some incentives. And we have a great team at Visit Tri-Cities who work really hard to get heads in bed. So,
Perfect.
did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You, BJ? So happy to answer other questions. I'll run you through our mid-year report real quickly, and it might leave you with some more questions. So when you look at what happened the first 6 months of this year, particularly, we compare everything to 2019. 2020 was such an anomaly. 2019 was our best year, so a great comparable. When we look at the number of rooms sold, we actually didn't do too bad comparatively, down about 30,000 rooms there. You can see the difference is the ability to charge rates. So our hoteliers were charging less per room, so that'll impact lodging taxes. But it is a good indicator that tourism is on the rebound. Tourism development, we spent a little bit of time talking about all those dollars we spend. A few things I want to highlight. Councilmember Zara Roach and I, we were the co-MCs for the Washington State Associations of Executives this year, their annual convention, which was exceptional. It really put the Tri-Cities on the map. This is the umbrella organization for Washington State Association. So all these different people we work to bring here, and their delegates got to see what it would look like to host a meeting here in the Tri-Cities. One of my team, Chase Wharton, he's our business development manager. He was brought in or inducted into the cohort of this year's cohort for Destinations International's 30 Under 30 program. So Destinations International, our largest trade organization, they're literally global. They had over 100 applicants, and it's the up-and-coming stars in the tourism industry. One of them happens to work on my team, so we're really proud of Chase. Also, one of the other products that we launched is something called C-Source. It's an analytics platform. It takes a look at, tracks GPS, your cell phone via GPS, so we can not only tell that you came out of, say, the Seattle area, but what neighborhood, and we can get demographic information of that, better understand our consumers. But it also tracks where you go to in the Tri-Cities, so we can see where you're visiting. Was it downtown Pasco? Was it Red Mountain? And it also ties in credit card receipts at an aggregate level. We don't know individual behavior, but it helps us understand what that consumer spend is. During COVID, we uncovered a great new opportunity for us in Spokane. We hadn't really noticed the level of travel as we have during COVID, and we've actually have marketing campaigns in that community because of what we uncovered there via C-Source. Conventions and sports, as I mentioned, slow rollback. Sports coming back pretty quickly, but conventions, a lot of these decision maker hedging their decisions to see what's going to happen with COVID. My team spent a lot of time rebooking business, but we're generating a lot of new RFPs. It's exciting to see the activity, so hopefully we can capitalize on that. Marketing and communications, no doubt you're familiar with a lot of what we do here. I mentioned a lot of those different endeavors, but one of the things I wanted to do was thank the City of Pasco for investing in Visit Tri-Cities, as we did COVID mitigation communications for both Benton and Franklin County on behalf of the Benton Franklin Health District. A week and a half ago, Destinations Marketing Association of the West, it's one of our larger trade associations, it's Western States, recognized us with an Outstanding Achievement Award for their 2021 Best Idea for our COVID mitigation endeavors. So very, very thankful for our partnership with all of you at the City of Pasco. And finally, we host a number of different groups and committees. The City of Pasco participates in many, many of these, including the Tri-City Regional Hotel Motel Commission, our National Parks Committee. Mayor Martinez serves on that. Our Sports Council. What a great advocating body as we work to bring those tournaments to our community. And the Tri-City River Shore Enhancement Council that we refer to as TREC. That's a high-level look at our mid-year report. I'm happy to answer any questions on whether TPA or mid-year that anyone might have.
Mr. Novakovic, thank you so much. Council, any questions for Michael? I know that Councilwoman Roach, are you on the line yet?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Novakovic.
Hello there, Councilman.
For the record, she did show up. That's what I was doing here. So thank you for attending, Councilwoman Roach. I would just like to say, Mr. Novakovic, that I am so proud of this area. You know, just to see where it's gone ever since I was a kid. I actually just, if you allow me, my wife and I took a motorcycle ride. We went all the events that were happening last week in Richland, Pasco, the racetrack in West Richland. Yeah. Went up to the wineries, and the view from up there, on top of Red Mountain, was just phenomenal. I thought I was in California for a little while, you know, in this beautiful green fall colors. And did get to see the horseback riding in the vineyards, and went to the Prosser Hill and saw the view from there. We live in a beautiful place, and I'm just so proud of it. I want to thank you and your staff for all the work that, you know, a lot of times people don't understand where all the funding goes, but thank you for the report. Appreciate it. Appreciate what you and your staff and our hotelers are doing for our community, and it's just making it a beautiful place. And we're opening it up, you know, to have people come and enjoy this place. There's so many things to do. So anyway, just wanted to, you know, throw that in there and just thank you for all the work that you guys are doing.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we appreciate it. No, we do live in a beautiful community. We're happy and excited to share it.
Anything else from council? All right, well, thank
Thank
you
you,
very
sir.
much
Thanks all.
for your report, and I appreciate you guys attending tonight. All right, next we'll move on to the next item in our agenda, and that's a request for consideration of C2 zoning amendment. Director Rick White, would you like to kick us off with that, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. And of course, Mr. Mayor, Council, and yourself are very familiar with what's going on. We just basically have a summary of the timeframe associated with the request for the reconsideration for some of the prohibited uses in the C2 zoning district. So we're working backwards from the November 1st council meeting date, and we'll send out our prepared notices in both English and Spanish either tomorrow or on Wednesday, the 13th. That will initiate, of course, the 14-day comment period. It'll be a little tight, but we'll have a staff agenda report and an ordinance prepared for November 1. And then depending on the amount of input, council, you may or may not want to adopt the prepared ordinance, or at least the ordinance for your consideration based on whatever circumstances we encounter over the next 2 weeks or so. So again, just a quick summary of the timeline associated with the open record public hearing on this proposed amendment. And of course, I'd be happy to entertain any council questions.
Thank you, Director White. And I can just tell you, I appreciate the movement on this and appreciate the timeline so that we can know what to expect. And I appreciate the fact that we're moving forward the way we are. Council, any questions or comments from council?
This is Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor Martinez, and thank you, Director White, for your putting this information together. I echo the mayor's sentiment that thank you so much for working hard and quickly on this. My only question would be when we're talking about finalizing the wording and other items there, is that something that you need any additional input from council on? Is there any ambiguity at this point in time that we can resolve sooner rather than later? So I would hate to leave staff in a position where you're doing a lot of interpretation over something that we're asking for a very quick turnaround on. So if you any thoughts on that that we can help make sure things are clarified?
No, and thank you, Councilman Maloney. I appreciate that. No, I think at this point things are fairly well known. If anything does come up, though, I'll speak with Mr. Zabel, and we can get a quick email out to council if that's appropriate or applicable. But no, I don't think so. Not at this point.
Great, thank you. Again, I appreciate you. I know how hard you're working to do your part, and just want to make sure that we've done our part as well. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Maloney. And if nothing else, we'll move right along to the next item, which is the Life and Safety Program for Commercial Structures. Director White.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. And again, based on council discussion from several workshops now, this agenda report is attempting to fine-tune some of the sentiments expressed by council. I did want to point out in particular that the amount of ARPA funds, the $30,000, I think, as the city manager mentioned last week, was kind of a placeholder. So that has been replaced by an amount that's noted, at least in this, for $5,000 to $100,000 per building or per property. There has been a period of, I'm going to call it continuity, described here in the agenda report to make sure that the use that's in the building continues for some amount of time. 2 years was determined to be reasonable. And we have enlisted the services of a structural engineer to help us with any professional assistance needed for analysis of either the building systems or perhaps where the funds might be best focused on in terms of increasing capacity. And I think that'll be very helpful to make the funds be stretched further and to be placed where they're going to do the most, have the most impact. Again, so if there's any questions or if there are any comments from council on the agenda report, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Any questions from council?
Yes, Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor Martinez, and thank you again, Director White. I have two questions. Well, I'll say one's more of a concern, and I'm just kind of putting it out there as to make sure that we consider this as part of the conversation. I'm concerned about timing and the ability for the businesses and business owners to actually get services down there to implement some of these. We know that contractor labor is very tight right now. At least that's what I continue to hear, and that's part of what we're seeing as a significant increase in prices on a number of items. If there's anything we can do to perhaps package this in a way where we can do any sort of blanket contract or something like that, I know there's a lot of legal implications on that and liability the city may take in and will we do that. So I'm not sure what the exact mechanism is, but I'm really concerned about some of these businesses being able to get, a $75,000 contract let to, install, say, some fire protection system or something like that. So if there's anything we can do to help facilitate that, make sure that there is contract support and labor available to install these in a timely fashion. I would hate to be scheduling these out for 2 years down the road, which will be if it is what it is, then we'll just have to deal with it. But if anything we can do to be creative on how we approach that, I would really appreciate that. And finally, I guess my question, Mr. White, my second question is, what's the sort of timeline do you think before we will have enough information from the engineering contractor that staff is working with, et cetera? When we'll be able to start accepting applications for this funding?
Well, my guess would be when a building owner or property owner notifies us that they're interested in some kind of increased capacity in terms of system improvements, we'll be sending the engineer out to that building to help with an assessment. So I see this as kind of being wrapped up, let's say within perhaps 30 days in terms of program details. And I'm trying to remember the deadline for the use of funds, and I want to think that it's 2026 for ARPA funds. So I think we have a little bit of time. And then I also think that involving the engineer on a first come, first served basis is probably the most efficient way to use his services. And by the way, we are discussing a contract with him right now.
Okay, great, and I appreciate that. So the idea would be that the program would be ready for being stood up in something like a month. If I'm just repeating back to you what I think I heard from you, so please correct me if I've gotten this wrong. Program would be ready to be stood up and for applications to start coming in about a month, and then there'll be a process to evaluate those applications and put that out there. I guess my only concern about first come, first serve would be that we know that there's a bang for a buck issue. We want to be very cautious and thoughtful of how we approach that. And my concern is if we do it strictly on a first come, first serve, we'll miss some of those for some of those opportunities to stretch what limited dollars we'll still have for the biggest benefit. So I almost wonder if we might be in better shape to do something similar to what we did for the business assistance, where we have a group of applications coming in, and those are then processed in all at the same time. Is Ray, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, yes, go ahead, Director.
Actually, this is Deputy City Manager Adam Lincoln. I just wanted to jump in and say one of the conversations we are having with the engineer is to identify the properties ahead of time and try and do to see if we can take the approach that you just mentioned and try and hit more of them at once if at all possible. Obviously, there's some logistics that we have to consider with trying to do that, but working with Mr. Hendren and a couple others and Mr. White, we've been trying to identify some of the buildings that we think are most likely to be on that list of need and try and hit them together. So we are exploring that actually.
Okay, I really appreciate that. I know a lot of thoughts are going into this, and a lot of work is going into it, and I appreciate that as well. We just have some business owners who are really hurting even right now, and so the sooner we can get moving, while still keeping in mind that we need to be very judicious with our use of funds. Appreciate staff kind of trying to balance those as you put together this program. So look forward to hearing more. Would certainly again offer if there's anything City Council can do. I know I'd certainly be more than happy to discuss priorities or how we can continue to refine the program so it really meets the community need that we've identified. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member Maloney. I have just a question, and I don't know if there's a real good answer, but we talk about the period of continuity is required for the acceptance of funds for 2 years, right? You know, let's say the building owner, you know, wants to do this, and a year from now he sells the building, or he or she sells the building. How does that get handled when it goes to a different owner?
Well, we have a couple models to use. There is some, I think there's an existing model from our block grant program. And, you know, obviously we're going to have to use the input of our legal staff for structuring a document that would run with the property for whatever period we choose, 2 years or so in this case, and make sure that that's going to be known and recorded at the title companies, so it shows up prior to any transfer of ownership.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. White. Any other questions from council?
Yeah, this is Councilmember Serrano. I know we've talked about here engaging with the city engineer. I think maybe this is just something that I'm going wrong on. I think it'd be worth noting that these plans, there's got to be like a plan review process baked into it. You know, I see looking through the bullet points, you know, approval to alter the structure by the building owner or authorized, but you know, we're silent on the fact that this is going to actually have to go through a review by the city, and that's going to cost both time and money. I wonder if that should be built into this memo, and whether or not we want to consider those funds, those costs of application to the city rolled into these types of applications. Just kind of some thinking out loud, just for clarity and just being upfront. Again, I don't think that should catch anyone as a surprise, but the more we announce it, the better off we are.
Yeah, certainly. Like for building permit and the associated plan review fee, certainly.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly it. If we can throw that out there, just again, so these people don't say, gee, I got to drop, you know, whatever it costs, a couple $100, $1,000 on city staff time. At least they're aware of it. And again, we can also, I think, whether or not you need our opinion, my opinion is that if we could include that in the application or the grant award, that I would not have issues with that.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Serrano. Anyone else? All right, thank you for that, Director White. Appreciate your help on this, and hopefully you got enough information we can move forward. Next, we'll go to well, Mr. White's busy tonight. Nuisance determination and regulation.
Yeah, well, I get a break on this one. This is our top 10 nuisance complaints from our software program called Track It. And so we've taken the complaints, we've organized them by how many we've received, and Mr. Hendren, our building official and inspection service manager, will give council a brief presentation through the PowerPoint here tonight on the kind of things we encounter mostly in terms of nuisance enforcement.
Thank you, Mr. Hendren.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
Good evening, council. Let me go ahead and get started here. The Code Enforcement Division is made up of 5 certified code officers. We have 1 lead code officer, rental inspector, counter contact, and then we have 2 that are dedicated to nuisance complaints. City of Pasco Code Enforcement Division typically receives about 4,000 complaints a year. Majority of those complaints are received by counter contact. We do have a large number that's increasing for the new Ask Pasco app. That's adding between 500 and 800 additional complaints. Obviously, we're a couple months shy for 2021, so the numbers might be a little skewed. All right, so our top complaints. Let's see, I feel like we need a drum roll here. So, number 1 complaint is overgrown weeds. In 2021, we've received 380 complaints for overgrown weeds. Here's another picture. Second is unpermitted construction. We received 329 complaints for unpermitted construction. Be nice to your neighbors. And fences, we have received 260 complaints for fences, and this is for type of construction, no permits, height, on somebody else's property, vision triangle. There's a number of different reasons why people complain about fences. Next, we have 215 complaints about RVs and trailers. This is either parked in the street, or they're parked in your driveway and it's obstructing the sidewalk, or not meeting our minimum municipal code. Here's another one. This one has a little bit more issues than just the RV that's an individual is living in. Let's see. Next, 181 complaints for garbage. There's quite a few areas that are kind of hidden throughout Pasco and just kind of become a dumping ground, unfortunately. Here's another one. This is a property, and the tenants are just piling up garbage on the balconies and out front, used equipment. Driveways, 180 complaints. So what we receive is typically garbage or blocked driveways, parking on the sidewalks, damaged curbs, people hopping the curbs for parking their boats or their motorhomes. Here's another one, junk and debris in your driveway. And then the next, we have the dreaded basketball hoop. We receive about 100 complaints about basketball hoops a year. These complaints come in by neighbors, they come in by bus drivers, your garbage guy, EMTs. These can be very problematic, unfortunately. Here's another one. This one was a complaint received by somebody that was disabled, and they had to go around, or actually they had to cross the street and go on the other side. Graffiti, we receive about 15 complaints a year. The nice thing is the county has a very nice program that handles a lot of this graffiti before any of us wake up in the morning. There's a little bit more. It's amazing how fast these grow. So that is actually, it's not the top 10, but it's the top 8. If you notice in that dark brown, that was 2020. Our numbers were all pretty high in 2020, but 2021, again, my numbers are going to be a little skewed, a little light, because we got 3 more months left. Just want to remind council that all the complaints that are received are complaint-oriented. People are coming to the counter, like I said, or using the Ask Pasco app. It's a large number of complaints that we receive every year. So that's the end of the PowerPoint. Does council have any questions for me?
Thank you, Mr. Hendren, for that report. Anybody, council, any questions or comments for Mr. Hendren?
This is Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, Councilmember Maloney.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Hendrick, for that report. I guess not a lot of surprises on what is where we spend most of our time on, but I do know that a lot of the time that where we have some, I guess, more difficult conversations to have is around some things like, fences or businesses that are out of compliance, etc. So I know we have a number of those that maybe aren't as numerous, but take up significantly more staff time, I imagine.
Oh,
Do
absolutely.
you have any tracking of how many hours are spent resolving a complaint or spent through the code enforcement process till the end?
I do. I don't have those numbers with me, but it's pretty amazing how many hours that code officer, that single individual, spends on each one of these cases, especially if it goes to the code enforcement board. Because what it is typically that code officer spends about 3 months working with that homeowner or business owner trying to get it resolved. Then it usually comes to me, and if I can't get it resolved, then it has to go to the city code enforcement board. And then we have 5 individuals. I'm sure you've all watched it, and they rule on either in favor of the city or in favor of the citizen. So it's a lot of man hours.
So do you have any idea of how, if you were to flip this in from a perspective, and I'm not asking you to do it off the cuff, so please don't take this as some sort of like me putting you on the spot. I'm curious about if there's a correlation in the number of staff hours being spent and what those are related to, as opposed to this simple volume of complaints. I'd be interested in seeing those numbers. Thank you.
If it is a basic complaint that does get resolved in, let's say, 30 days, that code officer is going to have at least 10 hours wrapped up into it, at least. If it's a case that lasts more than that, it could be 20 to 30 hours. If it goes to the code enforcement board, it could be even more than that. Because this is a lot of hands-on. This is a lot of notices. There's a lot of phone calls. There's a lot of knocking on doors. There's a lot of time involved trying to make good judgment calls and have the individual, whether it's a business owner or the homeowner, come into compliance. And keep in mind, while that code officer is trying to have that individual come into compliance, we're still getting the calls and complaints from everybody around them, continuously complaining, why are we not acting on this quicker? Why are we not, getting the garbage cleaned up quicker? So I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Well, no, I appreciate everything you're saying, and I wasn't meaning to question the amount of hours specifically. Well, I guess what I was thinking of is when you look at the chart that you put up in terms of here's the different years.
Yes, sir.
And that there was a number of complaints by these different categories of complaint style. Some of those we know are probably pretty easy to resolve. Hopefully, hopefully garbage complaints, right, is a pretty quick thing to be resolved. But I'm sure there's outlier cases. And I guess I was just wondering if there's a way to frame up that same slide, but instead of number of complaints, it'd be the ranked by number of hours staff spends on complaints in that category. Where I'm going with this kind of is just trying to understand if there's some action that city council can take to help this process one way or the other. I know obviously we need our neighborhoods to be clean and our houses and businesses to be free of garbage, graffiti, etc. So I'm not suggesting that this time what we change any of that. I'm just wondering if there's a way of looking at it from an amount of staff time spent in the categories that may draw different conclusions than just the volume of complaints.
Well, Mr. Maloney, this is Rick. So by example, perhaps what I'm thinking of right now, Mr. Hendren, is the process associated with rental inspections. If that itself has to be followed up with enforcement of some kind, my guess is that would probably be one of the most time-consuming complaints that the code officers deal with.
Yes, that'd probably be one of them. Yes.
Yeah. I think maybe Councilman Maloney is asking questions along those lines, like if rental inspections is one of those, what may be several others? Mm-hmm. And is there a way to either structure our, well, probably not rental inspections, that's a bad example, but chronic nuisance ordinance, for example.
Right.
Perhaps that's some kind of method that might be structured differently.
I can definitely work on that, yes.
If I may add also, I'll let you finish. Is that all did you get your question answered, Mr. Maloney?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. One of the things that I would suggest also, and I know it's been done before, and maybe in a newsletter once a year or something, just remind folks of the importance of abiding by the ordinances. I can almost, I want to thank the code enforcement group and the code enforcement board what a thankless job, right?
Yes, sir.
But their efforts and their work is so much appreciated by so many people. Like, I don't know exactly how it reads, but like for that picture with the garbage on the balcony there, I mean, who's to determine? I mean, I don't know if it's 1 bag, 2 bags, 5 bags, where the line is drawn on, before you go and approach them and said, you're out of compliance, you need to get it out of there. I just wish people would be considerate of others and understand, everybody should live in a clean environment. And I don't know where that line is. I'm sure you guys do with your code enforcement rules, with the code enforcement rules that are put on by the council. But I guess I just want to thank you. It's got to be a very touchy situation in many occasions. And some might say, well, what's wrong with having 1 or 2 garbage bags there at a time? Or maybe the person's handicapped can't go and dump it as often. Whatever the case may be. But again, I guess if it doesn't get resolved, it goes to the code enforcement board and then they deal with it. Is that how that works?
Typically, yes, but keep in mind, there's a lot of steps prior to that. If we see a large amount of, if a complaint is made and the code officer goes out there to validate that complaint, and if they see like that large amount of garbage that's on that balcony, they're going to go up and they're going to knock on that door and they're going to do a verbal correction. Hey, what's going on? Is there an issue? Are you try to find out where the root of the problem is. If they don't get an answer, or if it doesn't get, followed up or corrected in an adequate amount of time, that code officer then sends a courtesy correction notice. Courtesy correction notice will go to the property owner and to the individual, saying, hey, we're receiving these complaints, please get it cleaned up. That's also given, whether it's 20 or 30 days, then they'll receive a correction notice. That correction notice is kind of getting a little bit more serious. Hey, we're still receiving these complaints, please get this resolved. After that's done, then a notice of civil violation is issued. Basically saying, okay, now you have X amount of days to get this resolved, otherwise you're going to have to go in front of the code enforcement board. Before they go to that code enforcement board, they have to come and talk to me to see if we can get it resolved. So there's a lot of steps and a lot of months before it ever really gets to that level.
And thank you for that. Thank you for the explanation of that process, because a lot of people, for a lot of people, they would want to get it done in a week, right?
Right.
And it's just not that easy. So, yes, I guess I would just ask the community, if they're listening tonight, please consider others. Let's try to keep our community safe and clean, and minimize all the time that's being spent on these issues that can be resolved real quickly. The next question I had was, I saw, and I didn't see it on your presentation, but on what was given to us, there's a approximately 4,000 pre-Ask Pasco app complaints.
Yes, sir.
And then post-Ask Pasco app was an additional 500 plus complaints.
Yes,
that's kind of a big deal. So
absolutely.
That's telling me the Ask Pasco app. Can you speak a little bit to, is that a better route to go to use the Ask Pasco app?
It's definitely working. Yes. We're all going through some growing pains right now. The entire city is, along with code enforcement. Receiving these additional complaints is definitely noticeable. It's a big slap in the face. It's very, the nice thing about the Ask Pasco is it gives you a pinpoint location, or it's very close. And that really helps out the code enforcement staff. Pictures, a lot of individuals take the picture. You don't have to, but that helps a great deal. Then we can send out that certain code officer, or a lot of times it's maybe not a code enforcement thing, maybe it's more of a PD thing. So that there's a lot of benefits to it.
Okay, thank you. And again, I wanted to mention that because for those who are watching, this Ask Pasco app is really helpful for the organizations to get it addressed quicker and more efficiently. So, all right, with that, one more.
This is Councilmember Alvarado.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you. Quick question, and this might be more of a policy question, but there's times when there's folks who are elderly or folks who have gone through some form of major hardship in their lives. Do we have policies in our city code that make extra accommodations or extra time, or just for folks who may be on a fixed income, and no matter how long we give them, it's going to be a lot more difficult than the average person. Do we have any kind of allowances for senior citizens or disabled or folks who have gone through some form of hardship? I know if you're going through a loss of family or major illness, your front yard or things like that are probably the last thing on your mind. And how can we as a community come together to help them, but also just make sure that we're not adding punitive measures to something that may already be experiencing that's difficult. Just curious if we have anything like that in code, or if there's anything that we can do as a legislative body to create something like that.
No, absolutely. That code officer works with every individual, and the key to this whole thing is communication. If I come to your house and you hide, or you be very aggressive with us, it's hard for us to help. We try to calm down the situation as best we can, but we understand, we're humans as well. If you are disabled, or if you are elderly, or if you have just a broken leg from a ski accident, we understand that. We're going to work with you. But if we're 2-3 months into it and we're not getting any good feedback or any starting point at all, then unfortunately we're going to have to be a little bit more aggressive. Now, that being said, we also, we work with a lot of other communities and a lot of other, nice individuals that will help out. Whether it's your churches, we'll refer people to different churches to help out. Catholic Family Services. There's a number of different properties and individuals that will come and help the elderly, veterans, and so on. So we work and we walk through every one of those steps with every individual.
Did that answer your question?
Thank you for. Yep. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm curious if we have anything that would be, because it sounds like it might be more based on the discretion of whatever code officer may be working the case. But do we have anything that could be codified, or could be more something that people could expect that we have it in our books, or is it more just based on our discretion?
No, it's not based on discretion. It's based on our procedures and our policies. We do not have anything in code, but I have it in our code enforcement division on which programs will help out those individuals. Mm-hmm.
And Mr.
Thank you for that.
And I can also add that I personally know that each code officer is very familiar with the agencies and organizations that are capable of assisting individuals in tough circumstances, and they work with them very well, and often suggest their help in the appropriate circumstance.
All right.
Eric, thank you for that. Yeah, I guess I was just curious if there's anything from a council perspective that would be needed to codify that, but it's not that I've had a ton of conversations like this. I'm just curious.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Alvarado. Mm-hmm. And anybody else? And I guess I'll just finish. Would you guys, do you get the complaints do people call in about the garbage on the side of the highways, even though that's a state issue?
Yes.
And my understanding is that, right now between 4th Street and 20th Street is pretty bad. Mm-hmm. And I know that the correctional facilities, in the state would usually handles that portion. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And, I guess at this point, if we can make contact with them to see when we can.
It's actually a team effort.
Is it? Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And do you see many of those complaints coming in?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah. Code enforcement is kind of the funnel. We kind of get everything.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you for your report, Mr. Hendren. Mm-hmm. And, continue doing the job that we need to keep our community clean and within the rules.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next, we'll move on to the next item, which is resolution of Reserve Center lease extension with the Port of Pasco. Chief Bob Gear.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a request to renew our lease. As many of you know, we in the past had the fire administration and the training facility in a building owned by the Port of Pasco, commonly known as the Reserve Center on Ainsworth. And we've while we've been there the last 5 years jointly, admin has moved into the new Station 84. However, we've developed a lot of training facility at that at that building and would like to continue to be able to use that for recruit schools done jointly with the neighboring cities, as well as our regular training that goes on there. So we're kind of invested into that building in terms of training facility, and it does have a really good location because it currently is very little other buildings around that we disturb with our training activities. So this is a request to renew that lease for another 5 years with the port.
Thank you, Chief Gear. Council, any questions or comments? Hearing none, I've actually, I did read through the report and, you know, I see how much good it does for our community. Chief Gear, will that be affected when they do all the work for the overpass? How is that out of the way enough where it's not going to be affected?
Yeah, the overpass over in Lewis, that's the police training building. Our building's down, the one down on Ainsworth.
Oh, yeah.
So no, it's okay right now. You know, there may be a point if Osprey Point develops in the next 10 years, 5 to 10 years, that we'll have to work around some issues there, but I don't see that happening right away. And we use that, the training props quite a bit, and they provide a lot of points for us on our rating.
Yeah.
For our insured service rating, to have those training props.
That's the one with that new fire, yes, I got you. Okay, can follow you now. All right, well, thank you for that. We look forward to having it in our next regular meeting. Next, we'll move on to the resolution amended agreement with TCA Inc. for architectural and engineering services for fire department facilities. Mr. Gear.
Again, thank you, Mayor and Council. As Council realized or may remember, we contracted with TCA Architecture for design service on Station 85. We started down one path with the layout of the properties and the buildings, and then we're asked to modify that. And because we've got to do some modification of the design and some new civil drawings to accommodate an extension of Maple Street, the architect and civil engineering firm requested a slight increase in their funds, or excuse me, payments for that work. So that's what this amendment is.
Okay. Council, any questions or comments? All right, thank you, Chief Gear. We'll looking forward to see that in the next regular meeting. Next, we'll move on to Public Works Board, $10 million loan agreement for Zone 3 storage reservoir construction. Mr. Worley, are you on the line tonight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This item is a real quick one. It's to review a $10 million loan agreement from the Washington State Public Works Board for the Zone 3 water storage reservoir project. This particular agreement is pretty similar to the other many loan agreements that recently has come before council, including the wastewater treatment plant design, the wastewater treatment plant construction, the West Pasco water treatment plant expansion, and the PWRF pretreatment design loans that we have received as well. These low interest loans help keep total project costs down compared to the option of selling municipal bonds to pay for those projects. Those bonds typically have a interest rate of about 3.5% to 4.25%, where these low interest loans are sometimes around 1% or even less. These loans, as they pay for capital project improvements, they also help keep the utility rates for our customers lower because the interest rates are so low. So this particular loan for this project is for the construction phase of the Zone 3 storage reservoir project. It's a 20-year loan. It's $10 million in total amount available, and it has an interest rate of 0.94%. Now, the estimated project cost for this project is 11.7, but we'll know more about that cost after we get started on our design phase of the project. And as council may be aware, this particular project is a little bit different than the other ones that we have done. We approached the state project review committee to get approval to do what's called a progressive design build process for this. So we just recently interviewed 3 teams of designers and contractors, and are about ready to select one of them. And this is a project that will be doing a design build process. So we'll be doing both the design and the building at the same time in an effort to complete the project more quickly to meet the timeframes that we have. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I've got Maria standing by in case your questions are too difficult for me. I brought in the expert.
All right, thank you for that, Director Worley. Council, any questions or comments? Or are you going to get off easy tonight, Mr. Worley?
I guess so.
All right, well, thank you for that. We'll, looking forward to seeing that in our next regular meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to bring Director White back for the next two items. We have an ordinance, a code amendment to car wash facilities. Director White.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. And I'll just speak briefly to the car wash facility code amendment and the next item, which is the code amendment for drive-through facility design standards. Back in March, we received a request from a Pasco businessman to look at our regulations for car washes and the distance that they needed to be from residential zones. Well, we were about halfway through the analysis and the Planning Commission work with that requested amendment. We started work on the drive-through facility design standards. And it made sense, again, even though there were two separate amendments, to combine them into one and address the car wash facilities with Mr. Gonzalez's presentation he's about ready to give, which would be the next council agenda item. So this is addressed in the drive-through facility standards, as you'll hear about in just a minute.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Good evening.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and members of council. As Director White mentioned, we are working on a staff-initiated effort to streamline our development review process, and with that was to create drive-through facility design standards. For the purpose of this amendment, drive-through facilities mean an establishment that sells products or provides services to occupants and vehicles, or that services vehicles that drive up service areas, so typical drive-through establishment, restaurant, car wash, gas station, pharmacy, etc. The Pasco Municipal Code does not currently accommodate provisions with regards to site design, layout, location, or impacts to adjacent uses for drive-through establishments. So in consideration of this item, staff wanted to create a standard with the following goals: to reduce impact to adjacent uses, including noise, lighting, and promoting safer circulation, reducing conflict points within and outside of the site, specifically with regards to vehicles queuing into the public street or the public roadway. So the Pasco Comprehensive Plan provides policy guidance, including enhancing the appearance development through land use regulations, design guidelines for landscaping, screening, and parking lot design. And the implementation component of the comprehensive plan encourages staff to maintain codes, standards, and guidelines which are clear, concise, and objective. So currently there's over 50 drive-through establishments in the city of Pasco. I think there's about 55 at the latest count. Each has a varying degree of layout and site design applicable to its own intended use. Of most concern, however, is the circulation within the site, and obviously impacts adjacent to the establishment itself. So again, referring back to the condition where vehicles are queued up in the public roadway. As mentioned, because there are no specific standards in the Pasco Municipal Code, each application that city staff reviews is challenging to move forward with because we have no baseline for which to review the actual application. So this adds some bit of challenging review. It increases review time, and obviously it doesn't allow for consistent application of our goals and policies. So the next few slides summarize some of the primary criteria for staff's proposal this evening. The first one being on location. There's a few not permitted here, and I'll certainly address any questions on these. So drive-through facilities would not be permitted within 125 feet of a residential land use or comprehensive plan, residential designation. Not permitted within 300 feet of a signalized intersection below level of service C. So that's referring back to the operations and efficiency of a intersection. On that one, an applicant could submit a traffic impact analysis that would, that could determine or indicate that there would be no impact that deteriorates the operation or efficiency of a signalized intersection. Drive-through entrances would not be permitted within 175 feet of a public street intersection. That be measured from the entry point of the drive-through lane and to the center of the intersection, and would not be permitted within 100 feet of an existing establishment, so two adjacent drive-through facilities. Again, measured as the entry point from each drive-through stacking lane. With that one, also shared reciprocal access within the site would be encouraged and required when appropriate. I do want to point out, because I know that these may sound very restrictive, but I did try to do my due diligence to make sure what the impact would be on existing drive-through facilities here in the city of Pasco. And just for reference, I just took a few high traffic areas for us to reference. So the Starbucks and the Panda Express on Road 68 are over 230 feet apart from each other. So that kind of gives us a distance from what we're working with. The Sonic and Jack in the Box restaurants on Burden, just north of the home improvement store, are 355 feet from each other. And the closest one that I could find was the roasters and car wash establishments adjacent to each other, again on Burden. Those were 180 feet, so technically our proposal here would not have prohibited them from that potential regulation. Again, our intent was to provide some baseline criteria to eliminate or mitigate any potential conflicts, certainly not to prevent businesses from establishing themselves here in the city of Pasco. Again, just to, and on this slide as well, entrances, again, not permitted within 175 feet of a public street intersection. Once you get into the site itself, it's actually pretty hard to get over that or get below that threshold. And then we have also got entrances not permitted within 150 feet, again, of another drive-through business or entrance. Design criteria. Primary access would be located on a collector, roadway, or higher. So you could have a secondary access on a local road, but the primary access would be on our collector or an arterial. Again, guidelines to minimize turning movement conflicts onto the public street. Separate queuing and circulation paths. So this is separating where where customers are parking versus where they're queued up waiting to purchase their goods or whatever the intended business is offering. The minimizing of curb cuts, ingress and egress points. This impacts not only the safety aspect of the non-motorized user, but certainly the more curb cuts you have, the more conflict points you have. And again, reciprocal access within adjacent businesses. And I just want to make sure that I didn't skip over a bullet point here, and I did. And you'll see that not permitted within the central business district or the C2 zoning district. So I want to point out that the current C2 district already prohibits most auto-oriented uses, gas stations, gasoline services, auto shops, etc. Best practice typically is to not allow or encourage drive-through or non-pedestrian oriented businesses in a downtown, specifically a Main Street. What we have here in downtown Pasco, they are significant traffic generators. And just for reference, the McDonald's on Court Street is about an acre in size. And so when you factor in the parking requirements, the drive-through requirements, and the establishment of the business themselves, that would take up quite a chunk of land from our downtown corridor that would be not available for other uses. Back to the design criteria for vehicle stacking and queue length. Again, some general guidance on clear signage and markings. Drive-through would be required to be deep within the lot. So here you can see two examples of both types. You have the fast food restaurant that's on the right side that has their drive-through entrance deep in their lot, so as far deep as they could possibly get. And that business, to my knowledge, doesn't typically have vehicles spill into the public roadway unless it's a very busy time of day. We have a very busy coffee shop to the left, which has their drive-through entrance located about central or midpoint of their entire lot. They actually put parking on the northern edge of the lot. So if this were to come in brand new with this proposal approved, The biggest difference of that site design for that coffee restaurant or coffee shop would have been the requirement that their entrance be further to the north to eliminate or to provide more queuing space for vehicles trying to get a cup of coffee. With that, we've also identified some minimum widths and turning radiuses. They have been confirmed with our city engineer and new capacity requirements. So no jurisdiction has the same capacity requirements. Some have none. Others have very strict capacity requirements. I want to, we wanted to be careful here and require the minimum. We didn't want to be overbearing on any potential establishment. If we require too much queuing lanes, then we take away space that may have been used for the actual establishment. It may also deter the applicant from pursuing the application. So we certainly didn't want to do that. We did want to make sure we had some minimums in place to mitigate or eliminate problems with circulation safety, specifically as it spills out into the public roadway. So you can see here that the proposed stacking lengths minimums for financial institutions, so banks, credit unions, et cetera, would be a minimum of 160 feet. For pharmacies and drugstores, 60 feet. Coffee restaurants with indoor seating, 200 feet. Espresso stands above 500 square feet, 100 feet. Restaurants, so that's your fast food establishments, 200 feet. Self-service car washes, 40, and full-service car washes, 200 feet. Gasoline stations, 30 feet, so that's about two vehicles. And obviously, we cannot capture every sort of proposed established use. So we did try to identify some criteria that the applicant could submit, whether it's a parking study, a supplemental documentation from other similar like establishments that aren't identified here, that they could supply to the city so that we could properly evaluate their proposal. So both this item and the car wash item that Director White was referencing went through the Planning Commission. Both were recommended at the August 2021 meeting. The SEPA environmental determination on both of them were a determination of non-significance issued earlier this year. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Appreciate that report, Mr. Gonzalez. Council, any questions or comments?
Yes, Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Barajas, if I may.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Barajas.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez, thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question. Does this, let me rephrase that. Do we currently have any guidelines or ordinances regarding mobile car washes?
Mobile car washes, or we don't have anything currently that I'm aware of.
Okay, and my question really is regarding those vehicles that come to your home, your business, wherever you're at, to wash your car. And my questions are because how do they dispose of the water? Where do they dispose of the water? And again, what are the guidelines around these particular facility? I don't know if you can call it a facility or services, really.
Yeah, I may defer to my director, Rick White, on that one.
Sure, thank you.
And Mayor Pro Tem Barajas, we did not address those with this particular code amendment. Actually, I was just speaking with one of my colleagues just a second ago, and we're aware of some mobile detailing operations, car detailing. I don't recall if that's an issue here in terms of mobile car washing or not. It seems like that would be more along the lines of how to regulate the wash water and where it goes, because it most likely goes into the nearest storm drain.
Okay. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Council, or Mayor Pro Tem Barajas. Was there somebody else?
Yes, Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor Martinez. Mr. Gonzalez, I sent you and Director White an email over the weekend. And again, my apologies for the late delivery on that, but we get our packets on Friday, so Saturday was the earliest I could get to it. And I had some questions. I don't feel a need to address them all here. I just had some questions and thoughts on a number of them, but I do want to bring up a couple. Have you had a chance to take a look at that email?
Yes, and my apologies. I had meant to try to address some of those in this presentation this evening. With regards to any input we received on this proposal, outside of the Planning Commission and the applicant who was initiated the car wash amendment, they did take a look, the applicant, on the car wash, I assume, to make sure that what we were proposing wouldn't prohibit their own interest. And we didn't receive any negative feedback on that aspect. But that was all the I guess, public feedback we got for these proposals. We have not conducted any outside outreach for these proposals outside of the Planning Commission.
Okay, I appreciate that. I know that we've had a number of developers as we're implementing new standards and going through some of these efforts to truly, and I believe firmly, improve our code and and the way we allow developments and how development standards are set. I know we've had a lot of feedback at times. I do appreciate this has gone through at least how many sessions in the Planning Commission, Mr. Gonzalez?
Yeah, each proposal was at the Planning Commission 3 separate times. Each was under 2 public hearings, public comment periods. So.
Yeah, so I know we have an extensive outreach now, just to continue to encourage planning staff to make a special outreach to the developers and just ensure that they have an opportunity to hear this. But I understand very, very much that that's a lot of opportunities to weigh in as public, both for developers as well as community members. So thank you for that. So looking through my notes real quick to see if there's one. What other questions I had? So I think most of the rest of them are no problem. I guess my follow-up question, the one thing I'd like to ask in front of this meeting is regarding some of the flexibility that is currently built into this draft ordinance. I absolutely understand the need for that, and especially at this time as we're establishing something doesn't have a firm set of guidelines that are industry standard, so to speak. But I would ask, how can we ensure that in a couple years we can remove some of the ambiguity and interpretive ability on our current in this draft ordinance to kind of firm some of those things up once we understand it. A good for instance is that we have a list of items that can be submitted to establish a queue length based off of business volumes, the business model, etc. That can be presented to staff. And then there's a spot where it's very much or whatever else staff asks for. Obviously, we want to get away from any sort of uncertainty in that arena, and so I'm hoping that in a couple of years we'll have enough information to say, okay, this is what we get, and this document or equivalent will be sufficient. So, how do we ensure that in a couple of years down the road we have an opportunity to revisit this and turn those shoulds into shalls?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think staff certainly is focused on maintaining codes that are appropriate, applicable, and still up to date. I think this code, along with some of those that have been adopted over the past couple of years, will certainly go through their internal revision process when necessary. I think we really won't know what the if there are impacts of this until we get the new drive-through proposed here at the city of Pasco. I think with this, just like the others, staff will have to keep an eye on it to make sure, are we receiving complaints, whether they're from the public, from the businesses themselves, or from the development community, or stakeholders, or just folks wandering and visiting these businesses about a potential aspect of a new site design or something that just doesn't make sense. I think staff certainly is willing and is responsible to answer those questions, and it's up to us to make sure that our codes are up to date as they should be.
And Mr. Mayor, I may just add that these items can be tickled for review in a year or 2 years, and we've done this with council before with development regulations, particularly for subdivisions, come back after 6 months or a year, and it's not. I mean, we have all the software we need to enable that to occur. So, because if it has to rely on at least my memory, it's not going to happen. So it's really great to put it on our tickler system.
Director White, appreciate that thought there. Just to make sure that we're removing the ambiguity where we can. I know that's intent of staff as well as council, and I know the development community appreciates certainty and in regulations like this. So, Mr. Gonzalez, thank you so much for your questions. I'll look forward to any additional response you have on the other minor items I asked about in my email. But offline will be just fine for those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Maloney, and I can appreciate you asking those questions because as you were presenting this and seeing how, there is a process to be able to make these amendments, and we're depending on the Planning Commission to do their due diligence. And then, of course, staff is trying to forecast or predict, maybe predict is not the right word, but forecast and try to figure what would be the best for our communities. And then it just seems like many times, and my hope would be that this would be something that would at least be addressed or brought up in the meetings that we're having with our developers, because it just seems like it's inevitable. If this comes to our next meeting for approval, it might be between now and then the first time that a developer or somebody that has comments to come and talk about it, and yet this process has been going on for months, right? Several months, and that's the challenge. That's the challenge that we face, in this process. So the hope is that, between now and if whoever this would be of interest with the developers, I guess the outreach to developers and anybody who would be involved in this type of activity, hopefully would have got the information by now to make their comments. And if not, of course, they got one more chance between now and when this comes to council for approval, right? But that's the challenge, and we're hoping that we've tried to communicate this with as many people as possible that would be involved, like the developers, to try to avoid that. But I appreciate the work. It was a well presented presentation, and I know how this is important because obviously we have some areas that are adjacent to residential and kind of wonder how did we get here? How did this happen? But this would be moving forward. This wouldn't be any changes to the existing businesses that are involved in this, right?
Yeah, and our legal the department certainly helped us out within the ordinance. You may see references that state specifically that those businesses that were established lawfully that are in existence today can remain. There will be they aren't. They would be established as legal non-conforming uses or businesses. Yeah. Now, if there was major construction or redevelopment happening on that specific site, staff would then take a look to make sure, can we, in this next redevelopment, have them comply with the new standards. I did want to make sure to point out that when we did kind of do our due diligence check on the queuing length, because I know that seems pretty dramatic, but for instance, our proposal that financial institutions have a minimum of 160 feet. On our check, the existing financial institutions or banks, credit unions have an average queue length of 277 feet. Again, with coffee stores with indoor seating, our minimum of 200 feet. The indoor coffee average today in the city of Pasco is 210 feet. So we did try to be as generous as we could while protecting kind of the public right of way. But those businesses that are currently established today will remain established businesses. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Serrano. I got a couple quick questions.
Okay.
Just looking at the second item, that of the drug facilities. I'm looking at the pages aren't numbered. Let's see. It is third page, first bullet says not permitted within 300 feet of a signalized intersection below level service C. I recognize the purpose of that obviously is to not have additional backup traffic, but some of these areas, like say on Burden and 68, obviously we're not 300 feet from there, but it seems like those are the general corridors where some of these facilities are going to want to congregate. Do you have any thoughts or response to that as far as ensuring that, we make it so that these businesses are able to go in the business where the traffic exists, but they're also not causing more traffic impacts? Do you believe this is the best approach to that?
Yeah, we did go through and look at some of our higher traveled intersections to determine what this proposal would do to established businesses. I think with the exception of the gas station on the east side, on the northeast side of 28th and Court Street, all the others were well above that 300-foot threshold because it's not necessarily where the property line starts, or else all of those businesses would have been considered non-compliant with this proposal. It's the entrance of the queuing lane to enter the, whether it's the gas station bay or the drive-out window and the intersection midpoint. So that is quite a distance. If my memory is correct, I believe the distance on the gas station on the northeast side of Vernon 68 is well over 600 feet. So we did try to make sure that we weren't going to outright prohibit businesses from locating in the very places that make them business.
Okay, yeah, I think that was my concern is maybe I misread something or didn't quite gather that rather than being from property line, you're talking about the queue line is where the measurement begins. So I appreciate that clarity because I thought, oh man, we're really potentially painting people out of business. Maybe not those who exist, but those who may want to come. So I do appreciate that clarity. I think I had one or two other comments. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through my notes real quick. One quick comment on the new substandard. It's 25.176.020 sub 4. Just it says in addition to the site plan, and I apologize, I've got it highlighted. Okay, in addition to the site plan, additional documentation may be required. If there's any way we can clean that up and just give a sense of what that additional documentation might be, I think that's, something that would be really bode well for the development community and understanding what exactly we're looking for there. Because I know if I were to submit a plan and then find out, oh, there's additional documents that are required, but we weren't aware of it, obviously you're going to lose time on your development, etc. So, and I recognize that we have such information sense that follows, but if there's any way we could maybe clean that up a little bit more, maybe make a more exhaustive list, I think that would bode well for the development community. And then just one last general comment. I appreciate you bringing this. The one thought I did have is, while I think this is important, I continually hear from our builders, they're looking for something, for residential builders. They've been looking for like a specific set of development plans and standards. And I recognize this came about due to kind of fortuitous timing, if you will. But I guess what I'd like to throw out here is that there may be other more critical items that we ought to look at that would be beneficial to, again, maybe the residential developers looking for a specific plan set or standard set. So if we can kind of keep that in mind as we're working on these new codes, if we could really get, again, and I'm not a developer, but if we could get a more prescriptive plan set that could really hold both city and developer to standards from day one, and tighten timelines on some of these larger developments, I think that would be tremendously beneficial to our community as a whole. So I do appreciate you bringing this, but I do question if there's some other time use that we could really put to some. I mean, again, this place is blowing up with residential development. Seemingly, that would be really wise use of time. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilmember Serrano. Anyone else? All right, well, thank you for the report. Thank you. And I think that covers both the H and both amendments to the ordinances. Right? Yep. So thank you for that. Next, we'll move on to miscellaneous council discussion. Deputy Manager Adam Lincoln, do we have anything you'd like to share?
I think Mr. Zabel's actually on the line. Probably has it.
Mr. Zabel, City Manager Dave Zabel, you on the line?
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Actually up in my office, I got sniffles, so I didn't want to really be around anybody tonight. So a couple things I wanted to talk about just briefly under miscellaneous. One, we had a dedication and Arbor Day celebration at Palomino Park. And I want to ask Director Ratkai to talk a little bit about that. He's got a couple slides, and I want to just chat a little bit about it with you myself too. So go ahead, Zach.
All right, thank you. And yeah, we did talk about it a little bit earlier in the meeting, and just wanted to add for those that have joined since the meeting's been in progress. On last Saturday, we did tree planting for the community at Palomino Park, which is our newest park. It'll officially open in a couple of weeks when we get the rest of the steel structures and shade structures in place. But we were able to, and I do have to, all due respect, Mr. Mayor, correct you that we did plant 63 trees within an hour and a half. Thank you to the community and staff and the members of council that came out to help out. We were able to get a great community effort put in, and I planted 2 trees myself with my son, and when I looked up, our park was landscaped pretty well. So it was a good community effort. This was one of our first parks that was community designed a couple of years ago with the amenities that the neighborhood wanted in the park. So it was great to see that community ownership come into the park as well. So we're looking forward to that. When we have the official ribbon cutting with all the shade structures in place, we'll make sure to keep council informed.
So a lot of opportunities for a lot of young kids there. A lot of opportunities for them to, as the years pass, be able to point at the tree they planted or the shrub that they planted and take some pride in that and in their park. I want to note though that this was really a textbook example of your parks mitigation fee ordinance and how it works. And you know, just a little bit, I wanted to give you a little bit of brief history on it. The 5 acres that it sits on was part of a dedication of parkland from a subdivision in lieu of the fee, which was allowed for in your ordinance. And then over the years, as that area developed, the city collected what today is $1,300, I believe, approximately $1,300 per unit, residential or single family. That area developed, we amassed enough money to do this project, and as a result, the community gets a great park that really they paid for. Came from their mitigation fees and came from the original dedication. So I thought that was just a great example to be thinking about as we look at impact fees and the value of those to a community. Secondly, as council knows, we had a second round of awards for the ARPA Business Assistance funds. Those are funds to assist businesses that suffered a loss due to COVID between 2019 and 2020 and into 2021. I'm going to ask Director Sigdahl to kind of give you a little bit of an update of where we're at to date. Several $100,000 came out on Friday, and with that, Director Sigdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Zabel, and Mayor and Council. We are happy to report that we have, or the Chamber of Commerce has allocated over $600,000 in funding at this point, and there's over $550,000 that are being processed as we speak and should be allocated, or the check should be sent sometime this week and next week. And all of the businesses who have received funding have been notified, and they're awaiting the funding to be sent to them via certified mail. We have also allocated more than $1 million at this point of our utility assistance that council had allocated. So that is helping a lot of our residents make sure that their water is not shut off and their electric utilities and their garbage disposals services are not shut off at this point. So that is helping a lot of residents. And we do have a little bit of funding on the utility assistance left over, and we continue contacting our customers and letting them know of the availability of the funding. And with the business assistance, we are still going forward and contacting all of the businesses with incomplete applications. That is end of the report.
Thank you, Director Sigdell. If there's no questions from council on that, I just wanted to make a quick announcement of a few things coming up. So on the 22nd of October, we have the Hollow Weekend Cinema at Giza Stadium. And that'll be, they'll be playing The Night Before Christmas is the movie there. The 27th, we'll have a Coffee with the Cop out at Collegium in the afternoon into the early evening. And then on 10:30, October 30th, the drive-through trunk or treat at the Pasco Sporting Complex. So with that, Mayor, that's all I had for miscellaneous tonight.
Thank you, City Manager Dave Zabel. Any other miscellaneous items from council? If not, then we'll move right on to the next item, and that's an executive session that we have. The City Council will now meet in executive session to discuss and consider the minimum offering price for sale or lease of real estate per RCW 42.30.110(1)(c), and also collective bargaining unit negotiations per RCW 42.30.144. The executive session is expected to last about 15 minutes. So it is 8:45. We'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll be back at about 9:05. So with that, thank you for being with us so far, and we will now move into an executive break and then executive session. Thank you. currently, we are back in session. However, we will need an additional 10 minutes in executive session. So we'll be back at approximately 9:17. So we'll be back to reconvene at 9:17. Thank you. All right, it is 9:17, and I call this meeting back to order. We have now exited the executive session, and that is all for tonight. So appreciate everybody who hung in there and joined our meeting tonight. So with that, it is 9:17, and this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.